Hello, everyone. Happy Thursday. We'll give everyone a couple minutes here to get on. To get us started, my name is Heather. I am our head of customer success here at Sendible. And today we're going to be diving into Sendible's calendar. So we'll take a look at how to access the calendar, the different views, how to create content from the calendar, and share a couple different best practices, little known things about the calendar as well to help out from that standpoint. For the first part of today's session, we'll be diving into the calendar. I'll go through somewhat of like a demo of the area. And then at the end of the session, we'll have Patrick, who is our customer support manager. He's going to be joining us to help answer any questions live as well. Awesome. It looks like everyone is getting on. So while we give everyone just a minute here, let's see, it looks like someone's having an issue. Okay, all set. Just to talk about a couple little housekeeping items. So you will notice if you're looking at the webinar screen, Anne and Peter just said hello. So that's the chat box. You can use the chat to, we'll ask an icebreaker question. You can answer in the chat or add any feedback into the chat. If you do have any questions that you'd like to ask, again, we'll have time at the end for some live Q&A. If you do have any questions, you can go ahead and enter those into the question box. So if you see the chat highlighted, it's just to the left of that. You can submit your questions right through there. It helps us to keep them in the question box. That way we don't miss anything in the chat and we make sure we're able to get to everyone's question. And if I can just ask if you keep the questions relevant to today's topic, which again is Sendible's calendar. Awesome. Looks like everyone has been able to get on, so we'll go ahead and get started. We always love to start with an icebreaker. I am definitely feeling the summer heat. I moved from Florida to Charlotte, North Carolina last year, and I thought I got away from this summer heat, but it's been 100 degrees here. So I definitely feel like it's summer. So icebreaker for today is, what is your favorite summer activity? Be something outside, something inside, just your favorite summer activity. Mine would definitely be something with water, anything with water to cool off, running to the shade, whether pool, lake, beach, wherever you may be. Nice. Yep. Looks like a lot of water activities. Awesome. Very cool. And while everyone's answering, I'll go ahead and start sharing my screen. Beach mode. I think we probably all are dying for some beach mode, huh? Awesome. Let's just make sure that this shares okay here. Great, so you should be able to see my screen now. And I'm just logged into my Sendible account. And we'll go ahead and get started. So when you first log into your account, you're probably pretty familiar with this view because it's the very first thing you see when you get logged in. It's your calendar. And your calendar is going to show you content that is scheduled. Now, one thing I want to mention, when I first come in here, you'll notice I have 2 users filtered. But if I remove these, you'll see a bunch of content is going to come up. Now, a couple different things to highlight here. When you first come into the calendar, you're always going to be looking at the month view for the current month, and you'll be able to see your content across that month. Now, over from where it says the month, you can move. So if you wanted to go into the next month or the previous month, you could do so right from here. Next to that area, you'll notice you also have the option to switch between month, week, and day. So month is going to provide a high level, almost like a content strategy view for your month, where if you wanted to switch into a more narrowed view for the week or even a specific day, you could do so just by filtering in that way. Up at the top above where you see June, you'll notice it says scheduled. So by default, when you come into the calendar, you're seeing scheduled content for the current month. If you needed to change that, again, you would do so here. Next to scheduled, you have the option to switch into looking at queued messages. So if you're using Sendible queues, you have the option to view those queues as well by switching into the queue. You do have the ability to switch into sent posts. So instead of looking at what's coming up, what you have upcoming to publish, you could switch in and see what you have already published from the sent perspective. And then the overview lets you kind of break that down a little bit farther, specifically with queues, and then also looking at some different user filters, which I'm going to dive into now. So thinking about when you first load the calendar, so you first log in and you're brought into the calendar. As I mentioned, I'm logged in here as myself. I am an admin on this Sendible account. Now, as an admin, what that means is you will have access to all users on your account. You may be similar with that if you're ever switching into dashboards. So if you ever need to switch into like a team member's dashboard or a client's dashboard, you may know that as an admin, you have access to switching into everyone's dashboard. From a calendar view, the view of the calendar always defaults with those admin permissions in mind. So what it does is that at first, it's going to pull in all content for the users you have access to. Now, if you're an admin, you have access to all users. So it's going to default to show you content for all users across your account. So that's why you'll see there's so much content loading here because it's for all of the users on my account. If I wanted to narrow down and see just content for myself or for a team member, I could do so by just clicking into the team member filter here. And really think of this as a user filter, right? Any of the users who you have access to, you could filter into. So I'll come in and filter into myself, and you'll notice it really narrows it down, right? I only have 2 posts scheduled for the month of June, so I can now see those here. If I wanted to look at 2 users, I could do so just by selecting both names in the filter. So at that point, I'm able to filter everyone else out and only see the content that's scheduled for the month of June for Heather and Savannah. Now, to the right of the user filter, you'll notice where it says profile filter. So if we wanted to take that one step farther and only see content scheduled for this specific Facebook page, we could go ahead and do so. Or maybe it's 2 profiles that we want to see. We could go ahead and add them both in there. So you're able to really play around with this view of what you're looking at when you're looking at it. But again, keeping in mind the default as an admin is going to show you everything at first, and then you would use those filters a little bit farther there. So when looking at the calendar, there's a few different types of content or like the status of content that you'll see when looking at scheduled. So under the scheduled view on the calendar, you'll notice here where it says for approval and draft. So you are going to be able to see any posts that are waiting for approval. You'll also be able to see any posts that have been saved as a draft. So they haven't actually been scheduled yet, they've just been saved into your draft folder. You'll notice that both of these are shaded in gray and it highlights the status that they're in, right, for approval or draft. Whereas if you look to the right, these posts are more of like a solid block. You see scheduled. So these are actually scheduled, right? They're not shaded out in gray. So I know that these have actually been scheduled themselves. Now, if I want to view the post, because again, I'm looking at it from a month view, so it's pretty high level, right? I can see where it's going to and kind of a preview of the content. If I want to view the post, whether it's a for approval, a draft, or a scheduled, if I just click on it from here, it's going to allow me to view the content of the post, the profile it's going to as well. Now, if one thing I wanted to mention here is when we're looking at these posts, I talked about the different coloring, the shading here. You'll also notice from the scheduled perspective, they are also a few different colors, right? And so that's related to the social network that the post is scheduled to. So this is going to, if I click on it, it's telling me that it's going to Facebook. You can also see the little Facebook icon here. So it's in the Facebook blue. Here, this post has one for Twitter. So if I open it up, it's just one Twitter account that it's going to. Whereas this block, you'll notice is white. So the reason for that is if I open it up, you'll see it's actually going to 2 different networks, Facebook and Twitter. So it's identifying here that it's going to multiple social networks, not just one. So you're able to quickly identify kind of where these posts are going to. Again, when you're looking at it a month view, I find it helpful thinking about kind of your month strategy or 2-week strategy to see kind of where everything is going and how everything is kind of fitting together in that calendar. You'll also notice that there's initials here. So you're able to identify which user has scheduled this post or created this post if it's a draft. So since I'm filtering by 2 users, I have 2 users content on here. So you'll see HG, that's for Heather, and then you'll see SG, that's for Savannah. Also, again, if you click on this here, you'll know who it's scheduled by. Their full name will be right there. Now, as I've clicked on these different pieces of content, you'll see that I can view the content, right? So the content of the post. I also have the option to edit or delete. So right from my calendar, I'm able to modify these posts if I need to. Of course, if I delete it, it's going to delete the post completely, right, out of my content. But if I want to edit it, if I just select edit, it's just going to open this post in the compose box that we're familiar with and allow me to make any adjustments from here, change the copy, the image, or if I wanted to schedule it out for a different date and time, I could go ahead and do so. And you'll see here, it's just moved that way. Another way that you can edit content that's scheduled is when you're looking at the month view, you do have the option to drag and drop content as well. So this is helpful again when thinking about like that strategy behind how your content is kind of fitting together. You could just go ahead and drop it to a new day and go ahead and change that date and time as well. Awesome. So a couple other things that I wanted to talk about outside of just looking at your content on the calendar is creating a post and really working from the calendar itself. So from the calendar view, you'll still have access to your compose button, which you always have access to, and you can select it and create a post from there. You also can choose to do it directly from the calendar. So let's say, I noticed that on the 28th, there's no content scheduled. I could just click on the 28th. And it's going to pull open the compose box for me, just like we would here. The only difference is the date and the time is already going to be selected. So you'll notice that it's pulling up the date for the date I selected and it's defaulting to 3 p.m. So we just want to make sure if we need to change this time, we go ahead and adjust the time to whatever time we want it to go out at. And then from here, we can create our post and get it scheduled. So super easy and interactive, just work directly from the calendar if you like kind of that view of it. Let me just take a look here and make sure everyone awesome can still see. Great. So then just thinking about the calendar a little bit more, I wanted to highlight a few like common questions or best practices when working with the calendar. So one of the first things that I mentioned was, as an admin, when I come into the calendar, it defaults to show me all users I have access to and their content. So anyone who's an admin, that's going to be true. Now, the same thing is going to be true if you're switching into someone's dashboard. So an example of this is, let's say I own an agency and I'm the admin of my Sendible account, and I have 5 clients who all have user accounts on Sendible with me. Now I want to switch into client A, we're going to say Savannah's, a dashboard to see the content that they've scheduled, or maybe to create a post on their behalf. So I'm just going to click on my dashboard, find the client user I'm looking for, and switch into their account. Now, since I'm an admin, when I switch into their account, I default to look at the calendar, right? But those admin permissions are going to kind of override the client permissions. And so what it's doing is it's showing me all users' content, which sometimes if you're not aware of this, it can be a little bit alarming, right? Because you switch into your client's dashboard and you're thinking, wait, I hope my client can't see all of this content. They can't. As long as they're set as a client user, they're only going to see the content that has been created under their dashboard. But as an admin, again, it's going to default when you move into the calendar under anyone's dashboard to show you all users' content. Again, from here, you can just use the team member filter to select the client's name and filter into the specific content that you're looking for from them. One other thing I wanted to talk about a little bit is exporting content from the calendar. So we get asked this quite a bit, kind of what's the best way to export content? Maybe you need to send it to a client or send it to a team member. And you'll notice here there is a print icon on the calendar. So you could print the calendar view and send that off. That's going to be pretty high level though, right? Because it's not breaking down the post and showing you the full content, the profiles and everything, because it's showing you this kind of month view. From a best practice perspective, if you are looking to export your scheduled content, I do recommend actually doing it from the scheduled view. So I'm going to move out of the calendar and kind of switch topics just for a second. But if you move into scheduled here, you'll see all of your content that's scheduled. It is going to default to the user that you're under. So if you're under the client, it's going to filter to their scheduled content, right? Because this is a different view than the calendar. And at this point, I can choose by selecting one, or I could select all by using this icon here, and then under More, I'll have the option to export to CSV or HTML. And so what that does is that now allows me to export my content in a much more, I'd say, like friendly version for your clients to be able to see what's really planned and what's upcoming for them. So when you're thinking about, can I take content from the calendar and export it? You could print a view of it, but I find this to be a best practice, actually exporting from the scheduled view. So hopefully that's helpful there. And this is what the HTML looks like, the HTML export, which is pretty cool because you can actually click on the image and view it full size as well. So sometimes clients like that view quite a bit. Awesome. And the last thing I wanted to cover before we ask Patrick to join us is, again, kind of thinking about the calendar, and especially when you're an admin and let's say you have a ton of users, you have 100 users and everyone's scheduling out posts for the next month. There is a limitation within the calendar from a visibility standpoint that it's only going to be able to load up to 500 posts at a time. So if there's, let's say, 800 posts scheduled across your account for the next month, when you come into the calendar, it's going to start loading those first 500 posts. And then it's going to give you an alert that just says, we can't load any more than these posts that we have because of the maximum that we can fulfill. So if you ever see that error, that's why. It's just because the loading is going to stop at the 500. You can always use this team member filter to filter into a specific user to then see just their specific content to make sure that you have everything that you need. Awesome. I think that was everything I was going to cover. I am going to ask Patrick if he can join us. And don't forget, if there's any questions, submit them into the question box. I know we had one.
Hello.
Okay.
Hey, everyone. So I hope you're all having a good day. I'm going to be taking a look at kind of showing what Heather was speaking about, where when the admin sees the clients and they see all the posts and how that looks from the client side. I'm going to put these in the chat. We have two great support articles in our help desk. One is kind of taking a look at the frequently asked questions that come about the calendar, and the other one's kind of our how-to article on using the calendar. So if you ever need something to reference as a point, those are both great options. Liz, I will be tackling your question when looking at this as well, because I've done some testing while Heather was talking. So I will show off that a little bit as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen, and then we can get started. All right, so let me go ahead and start with this window. All right, should be visible. So here I am in my test account, and I have posts here visible for my client, Frankfurter, and posts that I myself have created. So I just wanted to show that if I switch into Frankfurter, I still see those. But next, I'm just going to share my window where I'm logged in as that user and how those aren't visible anymore. So let me pick that window and share that. So here I am now logged in directly to that Frankfurter client, and you can see that those posts that were visible when I was the admin, actually when logged into the client, I don't see those. So the client will be unaware of all those other posts that admin can see. And then the last thing I just wanted to show. So I was taking a look at your question, Liz, and I made a few of these Instagram reminders on my calendar, and I've been moving them. So some I did with an image and some I did without an image. And I have not seen it lock up when doing that. So I'm curious if it could possibly be a cache issue. The first best step at the beginning would just be to reset your Sendible cache, which you can do here by clicking your name in the top right, going to Preferences, then on down to System Settings, and click this Reset Cache button. If you're still seeing it happen that way, I would next recommend trying opening Sendible in just a private or incognito browser window and see if that fixes it. If so, it could be just something with your web browser, maybe like an extension is causing some slowdown or something, but that should help narrow down what's going on. If you're still having the problems, though, we're always happy to investigate and dig into things further on the support side. Yeah, and I heard it. I heard the
Awesome.
chat make a sound.
Just Liz saying thanks.
Wonderful.
Awesome. Any other questions, guys? We'll give you a minute here, see if anyone's typing. Hopefully this was informative. Hopefully, I know sometimes we get a lot of questions around like that admin view of the calendar. And I know it's alarming when you first switch into a client dashboard if you're not aware of that. So hopefully that helps a little bit to see that, and then some of the different ways to interact with the calendar as well. All right. Well, it doesn't look like we have any questions. So we will go ahead and give everyone some time back. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. We will continue to be doing these weekly, so hopefully we'll see you next Thursday. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Patrick.